Hello and thank you for watching. I was down to preach on Easter Sunday, but of course that's just not now possible, is it? For perfectly valid and good reasons, but it's not possible. And so I wanted to find a way of sharing some thoughts with you in place of my preaching on Sunday. And I'm aware of this medium that I'm using now, but I've never used it before. I'm not entirely comfortable with it. I don't like the look of myself as I'm staring at my laptop screen and recording this, but I want to give it my best shot. What a shame it is that we're not able to meet on Easter Sunday. That one Sunday in the Christian calendar where we really celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, where we sing our praises to God for what that means to us. Because the resurrection is at the very core of what we believe, at the very core of our faith. And let's just remind ourselves that without the resurrection, the opportunity to have sins forgiven is not available to us. The opportunity to have a deep and meaningful relationship with God is not available to us. And that is the impact, that is the relevance of the resurrection of Jesus. And let's say that boldly and clearly and with as much passion as we can. Let's thank God for the resurrection of Jesus, because of the difference that brings to us as individuals and brings to us as a church community. There are something like a dozen recorded incidents in the New Testament of Jesus appearing to various people after the resurrection, confirming that he is alive and well. And this resurrection of Jesus is not some fairy tale. It's not some idea that somebody dreamed up. It is reality. Those who study history and make judgments about what is correct and what is true in history will acknowledge that the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus is significant enough for them to say that it did actually happen. Of those 12 incidents I mentioned, I just want to select one to share a few thoughts with you about that particular incident. It is the incident where two people are walking home from Jerusalem. They're going to Emmaus. They've been up to Jerusalem, no doubt, for the Passover celebration, the annual event for the Jews. And when they were there, this was a time like no other. This was a time when Jesus was beaten and mistreated and ended up being crucified on Good Friday. So what was to be a celebration of God's goodness to them many years before turned out to be a bit of a disaster. And they're walking home, and it's like they are lost. They are lost people. Not lost in the sense that they didn't know the way home any longer, because they'd walked this way many times, but lost in the sense that what they had hoped for, what they had placed their trust in, has all just crumbled. Jesus has been crucified. They are disappointed. They are disillusioned. They feel defeated. They are in despair. There is darkness in their being because of what has happened. Lost people. whose world has fallen apart, who are wondering what on earth can come and happen next, because what they had become so committed to is no longer not there anymore. It's like, we had hoped that, but we don't expect it anymore. Once we did, but now all our hope is gone. They'd left a dispirited and confused band of disciples back in Jerusalem because all their hope had gone as well. Some of us right now may be feeling like lost people because of loneliness, because of isolation, because of social distancing, because of wondering where, when and how this whole thing is ever going to end, wondering whether what we had hoped for is actually going to happen. And if you are in that situation, feeling lost, feeling confused, then I'll ask you to carry on watching and listening, because God may have something to say to you. So there's this too. They are walking home to Emmaus. They are intent on talking and sharing with each other what they had experienced when somebody else joins them and walks with them. They don't recognize this person. They don't know who he is, but he comes alongside them, as it were, and he says, "What is it that you're talking about so intently?" And they can't kind of believe, why is this person asking this question? Doesn't he know what everybody knows? Doesn't he know of the events that have taken place in Jerusalem? And they kind of say that to him. And he says, "What events? What things?" About Jesus of Nazareth, they said. That prophet from Nazareth who had great power and authority and shared it with the people. He was a prophet. Notice that they used the past tense here. He was. Their experience of Jesus was now in the past. Is your experience of Jesus in the past because of the events that we're having to live through right now? But this man who they don't know as Jesus, the Bible tells us that they were prevented from recognizing him, takes them through parts of their Old Testament scriptures and reveals to them the events and how the Old Testament scriptures talk about that. We don't know exactly what he said, but no doubt he was expounding. And wouldn't that have been a great Bible study to be present at? God in the form of Jesus expounding the Old Testament scriptures. Wouldn't we have loved to have been part of that? I would. And these two people, they listened. It's very important to be listening people. We can hear, but not listen. We can hear, but not really pay attention. Not carefully consider what's being said. It's not unknown for my wife to say to me, "You're not really listening, are you?" And so these lost people are now listening people. And they get to the end of the journey. And Jesus, still unknown to them, makes as if he's going to carry on. And they say, "No, it's late. How about you stay the night with us and then carry on your journey?" And so he goes into their house, and at that point, round the meal table, he is revealed to them. And they realize that they are in the presence of Jesus, that Jesus is alive and well. What an experience that must have been for them. You know, from being totally depressed and despairing and all those negative emotions, suddenly the whole scenario has changed. And Jesus is alive, and Jesus' presence is with them. They spent probably more than 2 hours walking home from Jerusalem. They probably hadn't had much sleep in the previous 2 to 3 days because of the events that were taking place in Jerusalem. And here they are at the tail end of the day, meeting with Jesus. And then once they've realized that's him, he disappears. And they are left sort of full, renewed, new vigor, renewed enthusiasm, to the extent that they decide they're going to go back to Jerusalem to share with the disciples there their experience. I suspect they probably ran some of the way because of the impact of that experience. And here we have lifted people, people whose whole life had suddenly been changed because they had encountered Jesus. If you are feeling lost, then I want you to listen carefully to what I've just said, because I want you to be lifted. I want you to believe that even in the absence of church functioning as we have known it year after year after year, you can still meet with Jesus. God still has things to share with you to help you deal with what you are facing. I want to encourage you to seek God, to seek him through reading your Bible, to seek him through your prayers, to seek him through the telephone messages and the text messages and the emails which you may be sharing with other people. Don't let this situation drive you to despair, because our God is able and our God is willing. And I want you to move from feeling lost to listening, and then to being lifted by the Spirit of God. May God bless you.